I think being from parents who were from West Texas, rural West Texas, was important. I think moving around all the time as a kid is not always pleasant, but I think you learn a lot. And we stayed stateside after I was born. My older siblings had lived in like Panama or Germany or whatever, but it was all stateside here, but still, you're moving around to different kinds of places, different cultures. In fifth grade, moving from fifth to sixth grade from Fort Monroe, Virginia, this is like the late 1960s. From Fort Monroe, Virginia to San Francisco, where you're going to a public school in San Francisco, like in 1968, 69, 70, that was a big shift. I had never seen a hippie before I went to San Francisco, and there were plenty. And I think I got a lot out of it. I think you learn both. You figure out both. On the one hand, there is a common human nature. There's a sense in which everyone everywhere is the same. At some level, they're reacting to the same kinds of things. They have the same needs, the same interests at some level. But there's a lot of cultural variation. And you learn that quickly, that the things that were cool or acceptable where you were before are not necessarily cool or acceptable where you are now. And I think that helps you become both a student of human nature and a student of human culture and human cultural variation.
Sure. And we share that in common. I think I lived in 6 or 7 different places growing up. My dad was an Air Force lieutenant colonel, and so we moved around quite a bit. I was born in Louisiana, spent some time in upstate New York, was actually stationed overseas in the Guam Islands. And one of the neat things for me growing up on military bases was, like you're saying, the military is a very diverse organization. And so, for instance, like there would be essentially 3 Sunday school services or 3 church services. One would be a Jewish service, one would be a Protestant service, and one would be a Catholic service. And so when we went to the Protestant services, we'd get to see Baptist, Methodist, Episcopal, you name it, gospel choirs. So it kind of stunk growing up, moving around so much as a kid. But now I look back on it, as a big benefit in my life. I've got friends all over the world, and I got to experience a lot of different things. So I hear what you're saying there. Bob, you ended up, after being a military brat at Princeton, and among the many people you studied under, one particular person caught my eye, and that's John McPhee, who is one of the most well-known writers of, I guess you could call it creative nonfiction or narrative nonfiction. And he's also a well-known writing teacher. So I'm curious to hear what your experience was studying under John McPhee.
That was very important. For one thing, taking his course, it was called The Literature of Fact in those days, I think, gave me the confidence to try to be a writer, which I probably wouldn't have had growing up. Growing up, I had never known anybody who had written a book or anything. It seemed like a pretty exotic world to me. And so that was important. I learned a lot from him as well, both about writing and about he was just a good all-around role model. I still see him. We've become good friends over the years, and he was a real inspiration, both as a writer and just as a person. I've found out, getting to know him better, we actually have quite a bit in common in terms of our basic worldview. And he's a sports fan. We talk about sports. We have similar values, I think. So that's just been one of the best relationships of my life. And I think maybe the most important thing I came away with, in addition to all the things I learned about actual writing, was just a sense of the importance of trying to preserve your integrity as a writer, not take shortcuts, try to get everything right, try to be fair to your subjects. I have failed to do that sometimes since then, but it gives you an ideal to live up to.
And what drew you to, like, when did you decide, hey, I think I'm going to give this writing thing a shot. I think I can do this. What drew you to that, and when did you make that decision?
Actually, it's funny. My my mother was the first person to put the concept of journalism in my head. I guess I'd gotten positive feedback in high school from my English teachers or something about my writing. And this was when newspaper journalism was suddenly cool in a new way because it was right in the middle of Watergate. And so the heroes were Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein of the Washington Post. I remember I was reading their book, All the President's Men, in high school. I remember my mother was the first person, oddly in a way, but to suggest that I might want to be a journalist. That put the thought in my head. But again, I don't think I had the confidence. I transferred to Princeton thinking I might apply to law school or something that would have been safer in career terms, just in terms of your ability to make a living. And again, I think it was the McPhee course that gave me the confidence to declare myself a freelance writer when I graduated from college. And then I quickly failed at that. I had to borrow $1,500 from my parents or something to stay alive. But then I got a job at a small newspaper, and then thereafter I was able to make a living at it. And that was a lot of fun, working at a small newspaper on the Jersey Shore.
What drew you to writing and journalism? And I'll tell you why I asked that question, Bob, is because I'm a inveterate reader. I probably read 100, 150 books a year. And I'm sitting there during the quarantine, and I don't know if you've ever reflected on this, but I'm reading a book by Richard Feynman, 6 Hard Problems. I had just finished 6 Easy Problems. And yeah, I just was reflecting on it, and I was like, isn't this miraculous that I can sit here in Houston, Texas in 2020 in my house and literally open up a piece of technology and put the thoughts of one of the smartest physicists in history into my head? That just seems to me to be almost miraculous. And the other thing I've been thinking about for a couple of years, Bob, is I think the most powerful force in the world, the most powerful force historically, the most powerful force now, and the most powerful force going forward is the power of ideas. And ideas are primarily transmitted through either the written or the spoken word. So the power that you as a writer have is unbelievable. But I'm curious for you personally, what was it that drove you into this world of ideas and this world of writing? What was it that really made you decide this is something that I want to spend my professional life doing?
It's a good question. Again, it goes back even further than I've said. I had a good friend in San Francisco. We in my 6th grade class, and we kept in touch. His name was Bill Strobridge, and he put in we wrote letters to each other after I moved away, and he said he thought, I remember he said he compared it to Jim Bouton's writing, who wrote Ball 4. I don't know if you know that book.
Yeah, sure.
I later met Jim Bouton, by the way. That was
nice.
One of the highlights of my life.
Nice. And TCU also has a very well-known journalism school. Is that one of the reasons you were at TCU?
I was majoring in journalism at the time. The reason I was there is because I got a full tuition academic scholarship, and higher education hadn't been a huge tradition in my family. And I figured the idea of doing well in high school was get to go to college for free. And so TCU was a place to do it. I was in Texas. I graduated from high school in San Antonio. My parents were happy for me to be in Texas. But I was going to major in journalism there. I know I took a journalism course there that year. And they do, I think, have a good journalism school. I had a professor who was at the time at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram.
Named Dan Jenkins. Does Dan Jenkins sound familiar? The name Dan Jenkins?
Well, I know the name. It wasn't him. It was a woman, but he was famous. Now, I took a golf course at TCU for my PE requirement, and we played on a course that I'm sure Dan Jenkins had probably played on. He was like, he wrote about golf a lot.
He wrote a lot about sports. He wrote about football, baseball, golf, you name it.
And he was from there. I think he wrote a book called Dead Solid Perfect.
That's right. Exactly right. Good
was
memory.
That about golf?
I think it was. Yeah. Good memory.
But So let's see, where were we? I'm becoming a writer. Anyway, I don't know. These things just happen. It's like you try it and it starts working. You get positive feedback, you stick with it. I always, it's not like I enjoyed the process of writing. I always liked the feeling that I had written a good sentence, or that after however much work it takes to polish something to a point where you're happy with it, the feeling that of kind of craftsmanship that you've done it well is a very gratifying feeling for me.